contractor to the federal government. A veteran of both the Marine Corps and the Army, this U.S. government contractor and business owner has supported multiple U.S. government agencies. He spent most of the last 40 years deployed to foreign countries where the U.S. was involved. Deployed and conducted operations and provided support in over 30 nations, including almost 5 years in Afghanistan. Mr. Stinson has held and maintains a top secret SCI clearance since 1982. A plank owner of the U.S. Marine Corps Tactical SIGINT Ground Reconnaissance Unit, trained and conducted low-level tactical SIGINT reconnaissance missions supporting Pacific and SOCPAC. He's a multilingual linguist. He can speak English and Southern. And from 2002 through 2018, he managed and supervised an elite group of 75 specialists. I call those specialists guys like him and some of his best friends. In the GWOT, conducting everything from operations support functions, advanced operations, to find, fix, and finish. In August of 21, with a small group of other individuals, he traveled once again to Afghanistan and as a special advisor to the UAE, established an evacuation plan and facilitated the evacuation to the UAE of over 12,000 Afghans from Kabul to Abu Dhabi. He worked for 6 months in Abu Dhabi managing the humanitarian city, which housed the evacuees. He worked in Haiti, Bosnia, Croatia, Iraq, Horn of Africa, South and Central America, Indonesia, Syria, and Southeast Asia, just to name a few places he's been. Former co-owner of Radio Reconnaissance Technologies, Inc., and current owner of Raven Group International and Black Feather Group. He recently founded a soon-to-be nonprofit called the One God Foundation, which will focus on empowering the impressed, education opportunities for women and children, providing food, comfort, and medical support to those in need, establishing evacuation routes in war-torn nations, providing safe havens, and assisting in identifying and countering human trafficking.
I was asked to be part of this memorial event of remembrance to the Kabul 13, and I'll be doing that with a toast to the fallen, something we've accomplished since 2014. For these 13 brave men and women. We're going to say their names so they will never be forgotten. Real quick though, how did we get here? At this park, honoring these 13 fallen Americans who gave the ultimate freedom. How did we arrive here? And why ask me to honor them? As I said, and that was very gracious of you, as I said, I'm pretty much a no one. I did serve in the United States Marine Corps in the Intelligence and Reconnaissance field. I left active duty in 1994. Was a reservist in the Marine Corps for 4 years, and I joined the Army Reserves. Keep that kind of down low for all the Marines out there, please. I couldn't get the Corps out of my system, and that's why I stayed in the Reserves, and I couldn't get out of my system my need and desire to serve our nation and to serve others. In 1994, I started out as a contract to the United States government. I still am. Over the years, my overseas work with the government brought me to many austere and high-risk locations. The best way to say it. In early 2002, that location was Afghanistan. We ended up spending a total of about 5 years over the years. 5 years in Afghanistan over the coming years. During the time I was in Afghanistan, I developed some deep connections with our Afghan allies. In the spring and summer of 2021, as I watched the collapse of our 20-year effort, I knew I had to help in some way, as did many other veterans, everyday Americans that believed in our commitment to our allies. Through a strange chain of events, and having the assistance of a man I called my brother, who had close ties to the royal family in the UAE, a small group of us were granted the support of the UAE military in August of 2021. Crown Prince, the UAE provided us with 2 C-17 aircraft. The crew, security, operations center, access to Emirates Humanitarian City. We would manage the evacuees there for 6 months. Overall, from August until November, we did facilitate the evacuation of over 12,000 Afghan allies. But not just the Afghan allies. We brought American citizens, we got green card holders, special immigrant visa holders, and P1, P2. Women, children. We brought 7,000 Christians, the last Jewish family. Many of the oppressed that were in danger for being in Afghanistan we brought out. That was the same mission that our men and women in the military were tasked to do. And through that odd and amazing chain of events in August of 2021, I found myself once again at Hamid Karzai International Airport. I'm sure everyone has seen the photographs and videos of the August evacuations. More stories of the chaos, the human tragedy, and the fear and desperation of the Afghans as they look to us for freedom. Allow me to try and paint a picture for you, in your minds, of how it was. With each passing day leading up to the total collapse of Afghanistan, the evil that is the Taliban swept across every province in that country, heading to the capital, Kabul. There was no more support from the NATO allies. No more sense of peace or justice. No security. There's only fear, destruction, and death. I get emotional. I'm a big baby. In mid-August, with surprising speed, the country officially fell to the longtime enemy of the United States of America and the world. There were U.S. citizens still there, employees and contractors of the United States government, Afghan Americans and Afghans that held permanent resident status in the United States. There were thousands of our allies that had worked with the U.S., allies whom had fought side by side with us, and were now looking at us, once again, to be there and help them. Final moments, the last gasp of breath of what was once Afghanistan, our U.S. military was again sent in, this time to conduct a NEO, a non-combatant evacuation operation. Their job was to get out U.S. citizens, LPRs, licensed legal permanent residents, and SIV, special immigrant visa holders. Kabul had already fallen on 15 August. The Taliban were in the presidential palace. There were manning checkpoints. They occupied the airport itself. In the city, people were being stopped, houses searched, beatings and executions were conducted all over. Our allies and those that work with the U.S. were being hunted. Fear gripped the entire country, and it centered on Kabul. A combined effort of Afghan special operations and U.S. advisors retook the airport from the Taliban and secured a portion of it for our evacuations. The Taliban were allowed by our U.S. Department of State the duties of security control outside of the airport. The U.S. military, once they arrived, and other coalition forces were allowed to have control of security inside the airport, but only one portion of the airport, only the military side. The masses of human beings, terrified and shocked and in very real fear for their lives, fled to the airport. They packed the streets and alleyways, pressing against the walls and gates that surrounded the airport. The Taliban, sometimes selectively, but oftentimes randomly, fired into the crowd with their weapons. The Taliban security not only did that, but also beat the crowd, assaulted men, women, and children. Crowded the streets in the thousands, pushing, wailing, trampling, begging for help. And those throngs of people were U.S. citizens, others that our nation was bound to honor and, in humanity's name, evacuate. Our military had landed, set up defenses, and began the unprecedented, in recent history, Herculean task of making sense from that chaos. Imagine, if you will, 10,000 people storming that gate right here in this park, just storming it. They're being chased and they're being shot at. Our service members, many in their 20s, attempting to hold them back, trying to determine which family, which child, which person, which soul is allowed in, and which is not allowed in. As more Afghans fought their way forward to the access gate, or Abbey Gate, or the Black Gate as it was called also, for an opportunity to save, they'd waive paperwork, passports, IDs, phones with a text message on it that the State Department sent them and said, show this and you'll be able to get in the gate. The mass of humans screamed and pleaded. As the gunfire sounded around them. Good. Our military and many volunteer NGOs, non-governmental organizations, work tirelessly to weed out the actual U.S. citizens, green card holders, SIV applicants, and others deemed worthy of being rescued. And I say worthy loosely. Who says who is worthy except for him? It was a losing battle. It was like shoveling seawater against an incoming tide. Many of the U.S. military assigned to that evacuation had not even served in Afghanistan up until that point. They had not been exposed to traumatic and explosive raw emotional events such as this. Many of the veterans that were on the ground assisting the NGOs, myself included, who had been involved in the war, were overwhelmed by the intensity, the panic, and the fear. There was little to no infrastructure at the airfield at this time. All the contractors had left. There was nothing there. No running water, no working toilets, no showers, no food, except for what was brought and what was left over. There were no support services. The military, how do I say it correctly? There were vehicles left there, and the military grabbed whatever vehicle they could, hot wired them. Of course, the Marine Corps teaches that trade, I guess, right? Some of the young men hot wired vehicles, so everybody had their own vehicles. They just took whatever you could get. The military were there. The troops rotated duties at the gates, on the walls, at the towers, the holding pens where the Afghans were, and protecting the aircraft and airfield, protecting the Afghans and protecting one another. In all that chaos, amidst all the fear and uncertainty, I had the opportunity to watch and interact with some of our military men and women eating a meal one night as gunfire was ripping through the darkness around the airfield. I had a chance to talk to some of these young men and women, listen to their jokes, dark humor, bravado, ribbing one another, consoling one another. They were beautiful. They were the epitome of America and what she stands for. On the 24th of August, baking hot under the sun, kind of like this, I and some of the men I was with walked down to Abbey Gate to facilitate some of our people through the gate that were on our list. We had parked our vehicle up near some of the U.S. MRAPs. MRAPs are huge, hulking, armored vehicles that were staged and ready to support whatever needed to be done. Around the vehicles was some of our military. Some were on duty, providing security or overwatch. Some were sitting in whatever shade they could find. Serious looks that belied the age of the average troop. A lifetime of living had gone on for them in less than 2 weeks. I nodded to some, exchanged a Semper Fi to others, and continued walking along. That morning, the British had control of the gate. And when we arrived that morning, the press of the crowd and the noise of shouts and cries was a sensory overload. The Brits were trying to sort their Afghans from the multitudes. Us that trying to get our people through the Brits was going to be impossible. So we'd come back later. Turned around and started walking back. So to get back to the tarmac, the airfield where we were staged, you had to pass through a series of gates, areas that were packed with Afghans who had already been allowed entry. With each step, the dirt and the rough stench of the thousands rose in the afternoon sun. As we walked back, again passing the military, a group of Marines were gathering themselves up to move towards the gate. I could hear their voices, the names being called out, laughter and cajoling. A commandeered pickup truck was being used to transport them. They climbed into the bed, uniforms dirty, weapons in hand. Tailgate was down. 3 female Marines sat on that tailgate. Feet were dangling off the tailgate, jostling one another, talking and smiling as the truck headed to the gate. I exchanged a quick smile and a nod. Images burned in my head. I was impressed. Felt a huge swelling of pride for our military, for our Marines. They were America. They were young men and women who had dreams, hopes, and lives. They were honed to a sharp edge of perfection. They were professionals, ambassadors of the United States, tasked with an extremely difficult, almost impossible job, dealing with incredible danger and responsibility daily. Tired, dirty, afraid at times, overwhelmed but full of pride and commitment. At that moment, in those days, they made a lasting bond with their fellow service members, shared history etched forever in their DNA. That day I flew back to Abu Dhabi on a C-17 loaded with Afghan evacuees, heading to Humanitarian City. 26th of August, 2 days later, as our Marine, corpsmen, and soldiers at Abbey Gate were in the midst of the Afghans, the suicide bombing happened, taking the lives of our 13, wounding others, and taking the lives of over 170 Afghan allies and civilians. The loss of those young men and women was tragic. The entire evacuation was a debacle. When people, veterans, family ask and wonder if those 20 years and our losses were worth it, I offer you this. A few days before her death, Sergeant Nicole Gee posted a photo of herself holding an Afghan baby and said on her post, "I love my job." I believe it was worth it. Painful, sorrowful, and ever-present are the losses, the wounds, both visible and unseen. Never ending is the grief for the families. We as a nation did what was right. We stood for freedom. We stood against evil. During the evacuation, each person saved impacts a dozen more, which impact a dozen more. Like a stone tossed in a quiet, still pond, the ripples of our actions are going to reach far and wide. Well, today, on the second anniversary of the tragic events at Abbey Gate, we're here to honor the Kabul 13. As previously said, a person dies twice in life. Once when their physical existence ends, they're no longer a physical part of our lives. The second time a person dies is when their name is no longer said, their memory is forgotten, and they fade away. We need to say their names, remember and honor them, keep alive their stories of life, of sacrifice. This is our toast to the fallen. Please join me in remembering them as I say their names so their bravery and memory will live on. Staff Sergeant, United States Marine Corps, 31 years old. Came from Salt Lake City, Utah. Staff Sergeant Hoover, although his name was Darren, went by Taylor, his middle name. He was 11 years old on 9/11. Forgive my mess. Thank you, dear. Rosario Pichardo Joani, Sergeant, United States Marine Corps, 25 years of age, Lawrence, Massachusetts. Sergeant Rosario Pichardo, on the day that she was killed, waded into the crowd because there were two women being trampled by the crowd. Her captain was there and asked her what she was doing. She turned and looked at him, and these are the last words she said. "They need me, sir." Gee, Nicole L., Sergeant, 23 years of age, Sacramento, California. Lopez Hunter, Corporal, United States Marine Corps, 22 years of age, Indio, California. Corporal Loaf, as his father at his memorial, said that his son Hunter's calling was to help people and to help the Afghans. Paige Dagan W., Corporal, United States Marine Corps, 23 years of age, Omaha, Nebraska. Sanchez Humberto A., Corporal, United States Marine Corps, 22 years of age, Logansport, Indiana. Espinosa David L., Lance Corporal, United States Marine Corps, 20 years of age, Rio Bravo, Texas. Schmitz Jared M., Lance Corporal, United States Marine Corps, 20 years of age, St. Charles, Missouri. McCullum Riley J., Lance Corporal, United States Marine Corps, 20 years of age, Jackson, Wyoming. Marola Dylan R., Lance Corporal, United States Marine Corps, 20 years of age, Rancho Cucamonga, California. Nikoi Kareem M., Lance Corporal, United States Marine Corps, 20 years old, Norco, California. Soviak Maxton W., Hospital Mate, 3rd Class, Fleet Marine Force Corpsman, United States Navy, 22, Berlin Heights, Ohio. Now, Ryan C., Staff Sergeant, United States Army, 23 years of age, Corryton, Tennessee. These are our 13 lost in Kabul, today's kata. We ask that you always say their names, you always remember them, and the sacrifice they made for America. And we toast them to Valhalla, where all warriors go for the past that they've done. Thank you very much.